So if you don't like camping or you don't know if you like camping or not, like it might not be for you.
Welcome back to the Rangeless Travel Podcast. We're your favorite adventure travel hosts. I'm Britt, and this is Ryan. Together, we travel the world by plane, train, and 89 Ford Sportsmobile. Currently, we're traveling the U.S. in an old van with our 2 dogs, Layla and Cedar. Every Tuesday, we share stories and tips to inspire you to book that next trip. So go ahead and don't be shy. Follow along with us at Rangeless_ on Spotify, YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram. Let's dive in.
This week on the Rangeless Travel Podcast, we are so excited to have a special guest co-host, Fiorella. She has been traveling for the last 4 years and has journeyed to over 40 states and explored 35 national parks. She travels full-time while working for RVshare in her self-converted tiny home. So without further ado, Fiorella!
Hi!
Hi guys, that was so sweet. Very, very excited to be here and to share this time with you. So thank you for having me.
We're so excited to have you. And over the last 4 years you've been traveling, you've had 2 converted rigs. So we're really excited to hear what that process was for you to like getting into your first rig and then deciding to do your second rig and like what that looked like.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we've been on the road for 4 years and this is our second one. We jumped into this lifestyle well before it had kind of gone mainstream. So we bought our first bus in 2017. So back then, there was a little bit of information and there was definitely people doing it, but there wasn't this abundance of resources and stories of people out there. So we were definitely starting something that we had no idea what we were doing, and there wasn't enough like resources to kind of teach us better along the way. It took us 3 years to convert our first bus. We were just doing it kind of part-time, like in the weekends, building up our savings, that kind of stuff. And we were building based on things that we thought we needed and wanted, but having had no previous experience and with a limited ability to consume resources of like what not to do or mistakes other people had done in their builds and all those kind of videos. We were just kind of shooting in the dark. And so we realized very quickly after we got on the road with our first conversion, which was a shuttle bus, a 27 passenger shuttle bus, that we had made a lot of mistakes. Yes, we were big. We want, because we thought we needed the space, we were in that mentality, like transitioning from life, although we lived in a studio, so we were kind of already into like, okay, minimalism, like small space, but we still thought we needed, a big bathroom, and let's have like a shower and a toilet area, like let's have this separation, let's have a little hallway in the bathroom, like, we were in that mindset. It took that and building it and living in it to realize that, okay, we wanted to do this a little bit differently. And so for the year and a half we were in the bus, we kind of just always had this list of like what we would do differently and what we actually wanted, didn't want, and that helped us craft our ideal rig and eventually helped us transition to where we are now. This is an old search and rescue fire truck, so it's a combination of a fire truck and an ambulance. A very unique rig, so we were very excited about it. It kind of just, we weren't specifically looking for like an ambulance, we were just looking for a rig that fit under certain criteria. Like we wanted not bigger than a 14-foot box, so that checked that mark. We wanted like a separation of driving space, but also having like a connection, like a pass through. So we kind of just had some criteria of what we wanted, and this rig appeared, and it was like also cool and had its unique personality. So we were like, oh, this is it. Like this is, although we did see, I will be transparent, it took us like 3 months to find a rig, and Zach, my husband, was like full-time searching for rigs, and we saw, like physically went to see over 30 vehicles before we found the one we wanted. So the second time around was a little harder. I think when you really know what you want, it also becomes like, okay, you're being very picky, whereas the first time for us was very like, we just found this bus on the side of the road with a big for sale sign. Let's just buy it. Like, that makes sense. Like, sure, no research. Like, let's just go for this. So very different experiences.
That's basically what I did, because this is my third rig, even though it's Ryan's first rig. But the first one I bought was a school bus off Craigslist, and it was literally the second one I looked at. I was like, perfect. And I was in the same boat. I was like, oh, I'm gonna need more space. Like, I'm gonna need more. And one of the reasons why I ended up in the van, because we have a Sportsmobile, a pop-top Sportsmobile, and a E250, but it was it was because I was like, oh, I don't need any of that. Like, that's
Yeah.
way too much. Like, I
Right.
just don't need
So
it.
now we've gone like hard the other way. We're like ultra compact and ultra minimalistic. But now we're like looking, the more we look now, we're like, oh, we could do with a little bit extra space, you know? So we still haven't perfected it yet.
Yeah.
Oh,
But
yeah.
it's one of the things we talk about a lot, because I went in like not knowing what I really needed. I thought I needed all these spaces. I thought I needed like so much storage space, and I needed to do like all these activities. Like I was like, oh, I'm gonna need room to practice yoga inside my bus.
Yeah.
No, I don't. No, I don't. I can go
That's so
outside.
funny.
Like, but
Yeah.
one of the things that we say all the time is like, it's if you're looking to get a rig and it's your first rig and you don't have too much experience like van lifing or RVing or anything like that, is to rent and rent a few different ones. And I know that you're very familiar with that as well.
Yes, I am, which is funny because I always say this too. Like, if I would have known renting was an option, like we would have
Yeah.
probably like saved ourselves so many headaches and mistakes, especially in that first build. But yeah, renting is a whole new world, especially for builders. Like if you're trying to build a van, or if you're curious about this world and you've been seeing van life and you're thinking maybe it's for you, I highly, highly recommend that you rent a van. You go out there, rent a few in a few different places, just go experience the lifestyle, like experience living in a small vehicle, and see how that makes you feel. It's a great way to get inspiration of like things you want to do, things you don't want to do. Like it teaches you, like it gets you like in the space, you know? So I feel like a lot of us that kind of jumped into this lifestyle maybe didn't have a lot of RVing experience in the background, or even camping. Like I know we didn't. And we were converting like our experience traveling in general and like our love for travel to like experience with this lifestyle. And that was not equal. Like we realized later, I was like, okay, the fact that we backpacked Europe does not mean that we know what we want in a small space. Like it maybe means that we can travel and we can do with less, but like it does not help me make an informed decision on whether I like a fixed bed or not a fixed bed, or like how I want my kitchen set up to be and that kind of stuff. So if we would have been able to rent, it would have been so informative. So I that's my biggest thing that I tell people. I'm like, go out there and rent. And if you're curious on how to do it, there are companies out there called, the one I work with is called RVshare, and it's a peer-to-peer RV rental marketplace. So it's real RV owners all across the US. They're just renting their RVs, and you can find RVs everywhere. So from really cool destinations like Alaska and Hawaii to just like, you know, nearby to you. So you can even have RVs delivered to your house or to a campsite. You don't even have to
That's
drive
cool.
them to like experience it. So it's so cool because if you're in the world of van life or trying to get into it, it's super informative and it can help you make these informed decisions and get you out there. But also if you're just like a traveler and appreciate this type of like travel like style, you can just incorporate it in your travel. You know, you can go to Hawaii and just get a van there instead of having to just do the traditional hotel and car rental kind of traveling. So
Yeah, I did Hawaii. I did Maui in like a converted truck. So like the bed of the truck had a cap on it, and I camped out of the truck for like 2 weeks around Maui. So I would highly recommend
That
using
is so
something
cool.
something like RVshare to be able to rent something in Hawaii. So cool. Because I think the law when I was there was like if there was a fishing pole in the water, you could legally stay overnight
Oh, that's interesting.
on the beach. Yep. I don't know if that's still, this was like quite a few years ago, like maybe like 2017 I did this, but it was the regulation now, so I've definitely double checked that. But there was a few really nice campgrounds around as well. Which was a
I
lot
mean,
of
there's
fun.
really cool resources now, like from Hip Camp. Like I know Hip Camp has some really cool properties in Hawaii, and even just Harvest Host, you know, like there's like this that's been the really cool part of this lifestyle, and like seeing it over the last 4 years, like just how many resources have come about to help this type of traveling be more accessible for everyone everywhere. So it's just really cool to see all these different ways of camping and possibilities, and I just love it. It's just, I feel like we entered it right before, and then just seeing it all grow in the last 4 years has been so cool.
It's exploded, I feel like. I feel like I've watched it because I bought my first rig right after university, so it was like 2014, and there was nothing. Like, I literally saw one picture on Pinterest of this, like, green bus
Yeah.
from like the 1950s converted. And I was like, and it made my whole life decisions that much easier. I was like, no, that's for me. Like, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to live in a bus like this
That's
picture
so
on Pinterest.
That's awesome.
There was no resources. Actually, okay, there was like one. I would think there was like schooly.net was an established resource, which is basically a website that connects other people that were converting school buses.
Yeah.
But there wasn't that many voices on there.
No.
Like, there were a handful of voices on there sharing some information, but there was not what there is now. And I
No.
feel like having the ability to rent something and being like, because I feel van life and like living in an RV and traveling full time, it's like camping all the time. So if you don't like camping or you don't know if you like camping or not, like, it might not be for you. And I feel like we talk about this quite often that like van life, a lot of us come online, especially creators. We come online and we're like, van life's the best because so many pieces of it is the best. And we're like, this is what we do full time, all the time. This is our life. But I think a lot of people forget, because it's not showcased as much, that it doesn't have to be like a forever thing. Like, you can go and live van life for a gap year between like university and getting a job. You can go and do van life for like 3 months in the summer. Like, if you're a teacher or something and you have the summers that you have free time and like go rent something and like live in it for 3 months, like that'd be an amazing experience.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
or even just the weekend, you know, like I feel like van life is becoming its own category of travel, or like renting, like RVing is becoming its own category of travel. So it's no longer reserved to like whether you converted your van and you have that and you're living in it full time, or you bought an RV and it's sitting in your driveway, that you're like able to do this. But like renting gives you a possibility of experiencing this lifestyle without like, you know, the big commitment of like converting it or owning it or doing any of that stuff. But like, I mean, you could rent it for, like you said, like a month, a week, a few days, and just experience it.
Even
and
like to go somewhere specific, like a music festival or something like that, to go to that. Like, that'd be amazing.
Exactly. Yeah. Music festival, like tailgating, like really the like options on how to do or how incorporate this lifestyle to things is like endless, which is really cool.
Yeah. And then with RVshare, there's also opportunities for RV owners. Am I correct in that?
So RVshare is like a peer-to-peer marketplace. So we, like RVshare, the website doesn't own any RVs. We just facilitate the connection between RV owners and RV renters. So you're really just renting an RV from somebody who owns it. They're not like paying a big company to rent an RV.
So it's kind of like an Airbnb for van life.
Correct. Yeah,
sort of similar like kind of platform. One thing I really like about your RVshare platform is there's just a vast choice of different rigs that you can pick from. You know, it's not like, you know, some of the more established like RV rental companies where they have this one RV that comes in 3 different lengths and you have to pick that, and it's like a lot of times it's crazy expensive.
Exactly.
Like,
that's
I see on RVshare there's like a ton of like custom builds and things like that. It's really cool, and you can have like travel trailers, vans, and like Class C RVs as well.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Since
like
it's owners,
for someone who doesn't know exactly what they want, it's really like invaluable. Like, I know for a fact that when we finally decide to move into a different rig, or we're looking finally to look for a new rig, we're going to be in Team Fixed Bed. But we're probably going to go on RVshare and rent a couple different like styles of vehicle to see what we like, what we don't like, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a cool thing, just because it's owners, and so it's just like real people that have rigs. And yeah, like there's, you know, converted things in there. There's like really cool, like similar to Earth Roamer vehicles. There is like just renovated RVs. Like I had my parents come out and visit at something, and we got them a trailer, and it was like they didn't do anything to it. It was like the factory, like classic RV. But when we were in there, we're like, look at how they put this thing here. I'm like, oh, we should copy that. So we were just like, you know, walking around, like trying to see like, what do like RV manufacturers do that we can learn from? And it's like, okay, so like, oh, look, that's kind of handy. So we're just like dissecting the RV for inspiration. So definitely like a good way to get inspired and like see what other people are doing, how they're doing it, and if it works for you.
Absolutely. Because I was talking to Britt earlier about this. Every time we meet up with van lifers, everyone wants to see inside of everybody else's rig, see what they did, how they did this. Like, let me see this.
Where'd you get that from?
Yeah.
Light fixture. I like that.
Yeah.
All right, noted. Did you get that delivered to a locker, or like was it too big? Did you have to get it delivered to an address? I need these details.
That's too accurate. That's too accurate. That's not true. It's like, wait, but how did you get that? Or like,
How'd you get it? Yeah, how did you get it? We need to
I
know
love
these
that.
things. Is there anything you want to mention about RV Share that we haven't touched on yet?
I don't think so. I mean, we talked a little bit, I guess, quickly about delivery, but yeah, that's a cool feature that we have on the platform where RV owners can deliver their RV. So you tell them like where you're going. So like your campsite, or if you're, camping in BLM land, you just coordinate with the owner and they can bring it directly to that location. So you don't even have to drive it. So that's really cool in case you're like hesitant about the driving part, or like I said, for instance, like I had my parents come out and meet us, which was really cool because we got to camp in like BLM land and like introduce them like in a very real way to like our lifestyle.
To your lifestyle. That's so cool.
So, but we wanted them to be comfortable, so we got them like a very nice trailer, and I was like, well, I don't have a hitch. Like, how are we gonna get that trailer? So the owner, like, we worked with him. He met us out there and like set up the RV for us, showed us how to use it and everything. And my parents got to experience like a very real like Vanlife week with us out here. So that was really cool. So that's a really cool feature of it, because like it kind of makes it easier, especially if you're a beginner. And again, because they're owners, they know how their RV works. So that's a really cool part of it too. You are meeting people that are RVing themselves. They can tell you like the best spots to go to, how to work out the RV, what they like, don't like about the RV. Like, so it's a really cool way to also get into the community a little bit and feel like you're part of it. So yeah, I think that's the little parts that we didn't maybe elaborate on. But besides that, it's very easy to use. Yeah, just go out there, rent an RV.
I love that. Cool. Because we've talked about it too, because it can be a little bit part of van life. Because sometimes we talk about how everyone who lives this style of like nomadic existence, we make sacrifices, and we make a lot of sacrifices. And one of the things that you sacrifice is like missing milestone moments with family, and sometimes like missing family in general. So, and we've talked about it, like family, friends, and we were like, we can't have anyone come visit us. Like, where are we putting them? Like, we're in a van. Like, there's barely room for us, let alone like our friends and our family to come and visit. But something like RV Share, where we could get something either delivered out or pick it up somewhere, and that would give us the opportunity to invite friends or family to come and spend time with us, but like see a piece of this lifestyle and like try it out for themselves.
Yeah, that's honestly been my favorite part. Like, we have a siblings trip planned next year. We're going to Glacier with my husband's like siblings. Nice. So like we're getting them their van, and so they're very excited. So it's like, it's a way of like introducing people to your world in like a very real way, but also just for like a weekend, and you can still choose to have, something with a lot of like comfort and amenities. And so it's a really great like medium, I think.
And there's also the opportunity, because I know a lot of full-time van lifers still like to like home base out of an area, and sometimes they'll move temporarily back into a house or for like 3 months or something like this. So if they're not using their rig, they could potentially list it on RV Share and earn a little bit of money while it's sitting and not being used.
Absolutely. Yeah. You could list it. I mean, the calendar is up to owners, so you can like make your calendar available to whatever you want to rent out the RV, or like what you mentioned, like if you're not traveling for a period of time, that would be a time you could have it up in the platform. So yeah, it's very flexible in that way.
That could be a game changer for some people who like I know plenty of people that go out on like a 2-week trip and then they might be at home for a month. Some people are very particular about their rigs too, and they don't want anyone else touching them too. So you'd have to be willing to, put your baby in the hands of someone else. But if you're willing to do that, then there's money you could potentially make a little bit of money off.
Yeah, and we protect both renters and owners in RV Share, so there's like insurance involved and sorts of like, we verify owners to make sure that, you're not going to get scammed on the platform. So there's a few levels of like that we go through both ends to reassure that it's a good experience for both ends too.
I love it. I'm ready. I'm ready to try it. Let's go.
I love it. Yeah, it's very exciting.
Now, you've managed to travel full time and work and everything like that, which can be quite daunting. And we've now talked about a little bit about what the company that you work with does, but what is it like for you traveling full time while working and in a small space, and you're with your husband? So like, it's just can be a little challenging.
Oh my God, absolutely.
So what does that look like?
Yeah, that's actually a big reason why we did a second build,
Mm-hmm.
because we wanted to kind of have a more dedicated workspace. Like, we didn't know that when we originally got on the road. We had built a savings and we thought we would do it for a year. So we're like, okay, we'll just live out our savings, do that like just 1 year. And pretty much quickly after we got on the road, we realized how much we loved it and worked for us. So we immediately started trying to build ways that we could sustain ourselves financially long term on the road. So we both did a lot of freelance work at that time, which was, very flexible, and we kind of just didn't have such a structure as like a 9 to 5, which is what I do now. But the transition was difficult in a small space. You just gotta remanage it, right? So when we build the truck, part of the reason I wanted a pass through was so that I could have a place where I could go have meetings and I have like a little desk area, and I'm just like removed, so that my partner can just actually exist and he's not like sentenced to like either the outside or like no movement or that kind of stuff that van life couples have to deal with. Like,
We do that.
They're like, you
it's
have
like
to
you're
go.
just
You
like
have-
freeze
You take the
in a
dogs for a
corner.
walk now. Don't come back for 45 minutes.
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
Oh, you have to go.
Yeah. So we wanted to have like that little separation of space so that it was more like, suitable for those kind of stuff. So we did had to, when we were building, we were thinking about that. I had started this job like while we were building. So we were kind of always factoring that in, and we knew we were going to want that separation. So that came in the build part. And, working in a small space is tough. It can be challenging, but I think it comes down to like, your communication with your partner, and also just like the work style. So I don't think I could do this if my work was like extremely structured, like 9 to 5, like no flexibility. I'm very lucky to work at a place that not like just only is okay with what I do, but like obviously encourages it. It's like what we're trying to get people to do. So I'm very lucky in the sense that they understand, if like we've had a few cloudy days and I can't, my Starlink is going to be limited, or I have a very flexible work environment, which is very important for me, that the work culture that I was going to be in understood what I was doing and worked with me. So I'm very lucky in that way. Without it, I think it would make things a little bit tougher, because you guys know this life is so unpredictable. Like one day you can have all these plans, and then, I don't know, your solar can decide not to work one day randomly or whatever it is. So.
Yep. Or it cloudy for a few days, and then you're like, we don't have enough solar. Like, I only got Starlink for like 35 minutes, and that's all we got the power for today.
Or even when we had that cold snap, we were going through Utah and this cold snap rolled through, and we had to drive for 4 days straight.
Exactly.
Just to escape the freezing weather, because our pipes were going to freeze and burst in the van. So we had to drive all the way down to Arizona.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, we couldn't plan for that. It wasn't like nobody was expecting that to roll in out of nowhere, but you just have to roll with it.
And then we were like 4 days behind when we got here because we weren't able to work for a few days.
Exactly.
So we get that for sure.
Yeah. No, for me, that flexibility was like very important, and that's what has helped us make it like sustainable and like a long-term thing. So both from like my work side, and then also from, having like the space in here to where I can like work in many different places too. Like we have the dinette, I have the front, I have like an outdoor table. Like I think that was a huge thing for me. Like having different places where I can comfortably be productive really made it to where it's not like this exhausting experience and you're just like, oh my God, where am I going to work, or you have to move all these things to sit in this one place. Like really, when you're like living in a small space, making your spaces as functional for you in as easy like as a way, it's really been like the key for me to keeping like a stable job and not having to worry or like it drain too much on our lifestyle.
I think the accessibility of like your different spaces is so key when it comes to van builds and things you're going to be able to, you need to use every single day. Like you need a workspace. I mean, I know I need one. You obviously need one. So it's like you to have something that's like, oh, I have to move this and this and this and this and this just so I can set this one little desk up. And then that's my only option for where I can work. I can't work. It's either that or in my bed. Right.
Yeah.
So it's like, or if you have a bed that turns into a workspace, it's like now if you're one person, that's amazing because you either are in your bed or it's in your workspace, but you start adding like a partner into that mix and you're like, oh, if someone's not feeling good that day and I have to work, that means they either have to like just sit not feeling well at this bench table all day, or I have to work from bed because there's nowhere else for me to be.
Yeah.
Which can be like a big deterrent. But again, for some people though, they're like, oh no, I'd rather have that. Like, I'd rather just work from my bed. I know like a lot of people, they're like, no, I just like to be in cities. So it's not important for me. I just go into coffee shops.
Coffee shops. Yeah, exactly.
And I'm like, that's awesome. But I like to be out in like the middle of nowhere. So like, I like to
100%. Yeah.
So it really, it depends really on like what kind of traveler you are. And I feel like you don't know until you get out into it.
Exactly.
Because you'll say, oh no, I love to be out in the middle of nowhere. And then you go out in the middle of nowhere for a few days. They're like, actually, I think I'd rather be in a coffee shop.
Yeah, that's so
like,
true.
You don't
experience. Know. Yeah, experience is the key of this. Yeah, I feel like that was like the first build for us was like, okay, how do we actually do this? And how would we do it differently? And really thinking that out is like so important into building something that's going to be sustainable, like long term for you.
Yeah. And you went so big the first time. I know I went pretty big, not as big as you guys, but I went pretty big the first time. And then like I had a hard time finding places to put it because I come from the East Coast. So there's nowhere in the East Coast for me in my school bus.
No, you can't even take it to a campground.
Well, actually in 2014, when I built mine out, there weren't the regulations against school buses yet in campgrounds because there weren't enough school buses for them to be regulated against. So like I would show up and they'd be like, what are you? Like, what is this?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So it wasn't that bad yet because they just didn't have the regulations. But like if I made a wrong turn, I couldn't just turn it around. But when I came out to like, I was like down in the Southeast a lot, and there's some like open land there that you can go to. But I had a hard time deciding where I was going to go because I was like, oh, if I go down that road, then I get stuck and like I can't get out. I can't turn around. Like I'm just in there. So then I ended up doing like more safe like decisions with it, which I probably wouldn't have gone that big if I would have rented something and tried it out because I would have known that those were issues, but I didn't even realize that would be a thing.
I mean, that's exactly what happened to us. We like the first time we took the bus, and I still remember like down a dirt road, and it was like a corrugated dirt road, and everything is inside just like bah, 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 bah. I was like, oh my god, like what are we doing? So we used to call it like, well, now reflecting back, we call the bus like our first stop bus because in any dirt road, like the first campground, like the first campsite we saw, it was like that one, like take it, like we're done, we're not driving extra down this dirt road. And it wasn't because we didn't want to, it was just because like the vehicle wasn't capable, it was not suited for that, and so it was just so stressful, to your point, like the possibilities of like, are we going to be able to turn around? Is the terrain going to change? Is it going to be more difficult? Like how long until we find another campsite? And all those things were so taxing, so we were always on that safe side, whereas like when we did the new build and what we were like, we want to be able to drive down dirt roads for like hours and decide what spot we want with no worry. And that was a huge determinant factor for us in our new build, for instance.
Now you've gone to over 40 states and 35 national parks.
Yeah.
And I agree with you when you say RVing is the best way to see the U.S.
Yes, 100%.
For a multitude of reasons, because hotels are expensive, driving into places and like finding cool like camp spots and going out on BML land and trust land. You get to see, I think, so much more of an area than when you're just like passing through and staying at the La Quinta and, you know, that's where you are. But what are some tips you have for people who are trying to visit the national parks and travel on a budget and really get to see the U.S.?
Yeah, I mean, national parks are, first off, like I always like to say, you know, they are so beautiful. They're more beautiful than you think. And they are such a budget-friendly way to travel if you're willing to look at them differently, right? So I think we usually compare, like when we're thinking about travel, we think the traditional way. So I'm going to fly there, I'm going to rent a car, I'm going to get a hotel. And when you're doing that and trying to visit national parks, like it quickly becomes a very expensive trip because a lot of national parks are in very remote areas, which means that the accessibility is going to be more difficult. The amount of lodging options or accommodations are limited and therefore a lot more expensive. So I always think of places like, you know, Bryce Canyon or even like the Grand Tetons, Yellowstone, like places that people want to go visit, if you look at the area around and see like the hotel options, like you're looking either at a very cheap motel that is, gonna maybe not be the best experience, or a very expensive accommodation. And then in addition to that, you're still flying to an airport that's at least 2 hours away, if not more, in some of those places. So then it still becomes this very like taxing experience of like you're flying somewhere, you're driving all the time. Maybe you chose to stay in a place that's a little bit more like, maybe average price, so it's going to be further, so you're driving into the park like an hour plus every day, so it becomes this very like exhausting experience. Whereas if you look at it from like this idea of like, let's go camping, or in many different levels, right? When I say camping, it's like you could go from pitching your tent to car camping to what we talked about earlier of like RVing. And RV camping is so luxurious, and even within RV camping there's even those tiers. Like you can do a basic rig where it's just like maybe a small van, or the teardrop trailers that just have a small bed and like very little amenities but will get you by. Or you can do, a class A luxury, like have bedrooms, have a bathtub, like really do like every sort of part of the spectrum there. So it's really cool in that sense, but it's really the financial way to do it if you're trying to do this like national park or outdoor travel. So my best tips if you're going to be into that world is to just look that way, like try something different by either going with a tent to yourself or renting on RV. But anything that's outside of national parks, as you guys know, it's going to be for the most part surrounded by national forests or other public land that is free to camp in. So just like being willing to experience travel in a different way, especially when it comes to outdoor travel, will save you money, will let you like see more for your buck. So you're like stretching your money so much more. And then you're also experiencing a different type of travel. So it's not this exhausting, overstimulating travel where you're like running from one place to another and like driving all day and like doing all these very like, taxing things. Instead, you're camping in nature. So it's like you're going to be more refreshed, you're going to disconnect, you're really going to feel like you experience something different, especially in our modern world where like, we're so connected. Like coming out here and camping and seeing wildlife like actually be wild, or just like at so many beautiful campsites outside of national parks. I feel like I've experienced more magic outside of national parks, like right outside of them, than in national parks themselves. And it's like it gives you that opportunity too. Some of my coolest wildlife encounters were in BLM land right outside of national parks, and it's just opening this door for people to experience in a budget-friendly way a whole new way of travel that's right in your backyard. So you could do this anywhere in the US, so it's really cool.
And then I think one thing that people don't realize is just like the vastness of the national parks themselves. So you can stay at an accommodation that they're like, oh yeah, it's a 45-minute drive from the national park entrance. Perfect. And then you get to the national park entrance, but what you want to do is like a 4-hour drive into the park.
Yeah.
You don't realize, you're like, oh wait. But with so much national forests, a lot of it backing up into the park, it's almost getting that park experience without even having
to go in.
What you said, it's in your backyard. You're there. You're in there. You're in the forest. Like maybe it's not the national park, right? Like it's in the national forest that's touching it. But it is. It's the animals don't know that there's a line there.
They do not, trust me.
No one told the grizzlies that the park ends here and you stay in the park.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a different thing too, from the angle of like, you remind me of like, some people want to like, go to a national park and stay in the campground in a national park. And with the popularity of like outdoor travel increasing, scoring those campground reservations is so much harder. You have to do it like months in advance. So if you're really trying to just take that spontaneous trip, or just like this is a great alternative. Like you're going to be like, to your point, right outside the park, very close to all the action, and like have it be accessible to you from a budget point of view and from like just location point of view too.
We actually had a trip recently to Yellowstone where that paid off big time for us, because we planned to go for dawn in the Lamar Valley to see the wildlife. So we found a free camp spot on public land that we could actually see the entrance to the park from. Yeah. Like we were up on the hill just overlooking it. Yeah. And then we got up in the middle of like 5 o'clock in the morning, got up, drove into the park. We're in the Lamar Valley before anybody else. And then we were able to see the sun coming up and we saw wolves, we saw bears, we saw a bunch of bison, like all this stuff before like the crowds rolled in and then like you're stuck in traffic and things like that.
Yeah, especially in those bigger parks like Yellowstone. There's so much traffic. There's so many people.
Yeah. And it's so handy, especially if you want to do like a rental, like it's really experiencing Vanlife at the best because like if you're in a national park, we've had situations of going to places in sunrise. I think it was the Tetons, and we were in a place for sunrise, and everybody leaves after, you know, the sunrise kind of finishes, and we're just in the parking lot, like, making breakfast. And then I look up, and there's this massive, like, moose just, like, walking outside. And it's like, okay, well, everybody left, so it was just us and the moose because we stayed back and we were, like, doing, like, you know, cooking breakfast, and it was incredible. And we've had so many stories of things like that, of, like, it just, like, doesn't put you in the same schedule as, like, the tourist crowds. It puts you in a different, like, it gives you more flexibility. Like, you can make your own meals. You don't have to drive another 30 minutes to the one restaurant or to the one, like, you know, grocery store. So it really gives you, like, full flexibility of your schedule. And that is huge in national parks, from getting places earlier to accessing, you know, wildlife in just different locations at different times instead of having to just kind of follow the crowds.
Is there anything we missed on today's episode? I don't think so. I think we've hit it all.
Yeah,
is there anything that we didn't chat about that you were hoping to?
I don't think so. I think we touched. I mean, I love the conversation.
Yeah, it's been so much fun. Now, if someone wants more from you, where can they find you?
Yeah, so I'm on all social channels with Growing Slow and Wild. And then if you want to check out RVshare, that's rvshare.com. We're also on all social platforms with just RVshare.
Love it. And that is it for this episode of the Rangeless Travel Podcast. If you want more from us, you can find us at Rangeless_ on Instagram, TikTok, Spotify, wherever else you find your podcasts, and of course, YouTube. Until next week.
Bye.
Whoop, whoop.